Washington mornings on the Mall. 105.9 FM. And AM 630. WMAL.
7:07 on WMAL. Good Monday morning to you. Brian Neiman, Brian Wilson with you.
How you doing, Nemo?
Feeling pretty good. Did a little painting around the house this weekend.
Really?
It's always fun. I think the fumes got to me. I need to open up the window.
Oh, that's what's wrong with you today?
Yeah, I think so. Joe DIGENOVA, our legal expert, joins us now. Good morning, Joe. How are you, bud?
I'm doing fine now that we have martial law.
Okay, here's the question. I know things go a little crazy on the weekends, and I got tons and tons of email from people. Do you believe what the president is doing now? He's going to declare martial law. He's going to expand his powers. Apparently, the White House this weekend, maybe it was Friday, maybe it was Saturday, I think it was on a Friday, released an executive order that, put the internet world in a tizzy. Some say it gives him more power to institute martial law. It was the National Defense Resources Preparedness Executive Order. Have you looked at this? Have you heard this? Is it a big deal? I've heard some people say, you know what, this is nothing, no different from what past presidents have done, including President Clinton, including George W. Bush.
Well, actually, I was unaware that Clinton and Bush had signed martial law orders involving national defense resources. I actually was unaware of that. If they have, I missed it. What's interesting about this is that if it was so important, it certainly wasn't explained to anybody, and was put out on a Friday afternoon late when everybody is gone.
Mm-hmm.
You can always tell when a policy is announced on the Friday that they're not interested in having people find out about it. I know. Right now, I can tell you what's happening up on the Hill. People on both sides of the aisle, including Democrats, are looking at this, and if they haven't been read into it ahead of time, they're scratching their heads wondering, why now? Why now do we have to protect natural resources? What's happening that caused this? This is the issue. Why is this happening now? Now, I know that the CIA just raised Mexico to a Tier 1 country, and what that means is they can now go in and conduct covert operations in Mexico and use what are called aggressive intelligence collections. It is perhaps that may have something to do with this, but that's not been mentioned in any stories that I've seen.
So does this pertain to solely defending resources in this country?
Yes, and actually also corralling them, taking control of water, steel, lumber. I mean, this is like when Truman tried to seize the steel mills. Remember that? You may not remember.
I don't remember that.
I was
it's
actually
a little before my
born.
time, man.
And that was, of course, struck down by the Supreme Court. This is of that same character, and he's using the 1950 Defense Materials Act to do it. That's what he says is his authorization. This is going to attract an enormous amount of attention for the simple reason that they didn't explain that they were doing it, and they didn't say why that they were doing it. The president, who uses czars like he uses sugar in coffee, has now put himself in a very interesting position shortly before an election. I mean, it's like Chavez. You sit here and you say to yourself, what are they thinking? Why now? Why no explanation? And again, as I say, it is true that they just raised Mexico to a Tier 1 country like Afghanistan. Maybe that's part of this, but that's, we don't have any resources near the border except Mexico's oil and Texas's oil.
Well, what you hear is they say, well, look, we had to update it because the old one didn't even refer to the Department of Homeland Security, which wasn't in existence the last time this particular act was updated.
Well, this is not the act that they're updating. They're updating an
executive order based on the act.
They're not amending a piece of legislation. So I don't know why it was done. And the answer, to me, that's the most important question of all. Why was it done? And if other presidents have done it, I'd like to see those orders.
Well, here's I read there's a professor at Cornell. I don't know if you know him. I don't know if you know his political persuasion or not, but his name is William Jacobson. He's a professor at Cornell and is quoted in a news article that I read that said it's updating some. The executive order was signed by President Clinton in '94 and one by Eisenhower in '58. Another one that was amended by Bush in 2003. Mm-hmm. So it was more of an update to those executive orders.
Well, it may very well be. Well, why wasn't it announced if it's so important for the president to do it? I think they're afraid of it. And probably they may have been told by people in the Defense Department that you got to do this. This hasn't been done. But again, something done in the still of the night on Friday,
right.
you have to ask yourself why. What's the big deal? I think they're afraid of it, but they were forced to do it by DOD. I don't. To me, there's a lot more to be learned.
Okay.
By the way, when you release something on Friday now, it's almost become a cliche that now everybody's looking.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
this you can't hide anymore.
You can't hide anymore. You can run, but you can't
right.
hide. Hey, listen, I want to turn to this Ted Stevens. He's the senator from Alaska, now, the late Ted Stevens now.
Right.
There was an ethics trial, and there have been a great deal of investigation into the techniques and the procedures used by the U.S. attorneys who brought this case.
Right.
And the accusation is that they hid information that would have been favorable to Senator Stevens. There's a big 514-page report that came out on Thursday,
yeah.
and a lot of people are very upset about what happened here. Give us your perspective as someone who actually worked inside the Justice Department.
Well, this is a very serious matter. The report was issued by a guy named Henry Schulke, who's a former federal prosecutor. I know Henry very well. He's a fabulous trial attorney and defense attorney. This was the case where Senator Stevens was basically convicted on fraudulent evidence. And the special prosecutor found that the DOJ attorneys from Maine Justice and the Alaska Assistant United States attorneys engaged in what he called systematic concealment of evidence of innocence, evidence which Senator Stevens could have used in his trial to prove his innocence and to destroy the credibility of the government's chief witness. It is a scathing report. It's very disturbing. It shows that there is a culture at the Justice Department, even at this late date, of winning at all costs. And it is really disturbing, and I will be very anxious to see what kind of punishments are meted out by Eric Holder. Some of the people have left the department. Some of them are still there. The assistant U.S. attorneys in Alaska are still there. They have vehemently denied that they did anything wrong. Those denials are worthless. This finding by Hank Schulke, a neutral and detached person, tells every American that it's time to shake up the Justice Department. The career prosecutors who were always held up as the best and the brightest, this is far from that. This is disturbing. All of these people were career prosecutors. Not a single one was a political appointee. This is disgraceful. And remember what happened. Stevens was defeated in a very close election.
Yep.
The verdict happened like 10 days before the election. The Alaskans elected a Democrat who was the 60th vote for Obamacare. He was the 60th vote for Obamacare. They changed, these corrupt prosecutors changed not only the outcome of the case, but the balance of power in the United States Senate. Some of them should go to jail.
I was going to ask you that. I mean, what besides being fired? I mean, can you actually go do jail time for this?
In this case, the special prosecutor said that they could not be held in criminal contempt because the judge had not issued a specific order telling them to turn over exculpatory evidence. Well, that's fine. But there are other laws out there, like suborning perjury, obstruction of justice.
Mm-hmm.
The Justice Department charges that all the time when defense witnesses or defense attorneys or defendants do the things that these prosecutors are